So welcome to the SecureDynamics TechCast. With me, I have a first-time guest. I have Mary Chaney, who is I'm going to read this so I don't miss anything. She's an InfoSec and privacy executive, an engineer, lawyer, professor, and Minorities in Cybersecurity CEO and president. Did I miss anything?
Did you get the teacher? Yeah, I think
I got the professor. Yes, I did.
Professor. Okay, yeah, I think you got it all. I think you got it all.
Fair enough. So let's talk about something that you and I chatted about earlier, which I found to be very intriguing, which is really about the topic of cybersecurity, defense and offense. And I'll start off with something that you had mentioned, which is really the offense really has no rules, right? Whether it's digital child predators, whether it's nation states, ransomware attackers, so on and so forth. So they play by whatever rules. They take advantage of the cloud. They take advantage of people without cybersecurity hygiene. But on the defense side, we do not have that level of flexibility or thinking. So talk a little bit about, is this even a fair game where the offense literally has no rules and the defense is constrained by various self-imposed as well as imposed by other rules and regulations?
Yeah, I think, of course, the offense is always fun to play when there's no refs, no rules, no penalties for anything, and then the defense is constrained. But I believe that depending, right, on what you're being required to do. So, I consider a CISO to be a defensive coordinator, right? And the way I defend against a Tom Brady, excuse those that are listening to the talk that are not football fans. I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but the way I would defend against Tom Brady is different from the way I would defend against Patrick Mahomes or, the difference between Aaron Rodgers, things like that. And so you have state-sponsored folks, you got legal and regulatory compliance, you got bad employees, you got, physical security threats. And then you have, all of those are the things on the offensive side that you're trying to protect against. And then defensive, well, you have people playing both sides, right? Third-party risk management could be offense or defense, depending on the relationship. I mean, privacy is a sword and shield as well. Those components of whether or not the regulatory compliance aspects of things, you can use that and in an offensive or defensive way. And you have your frameworks out there, which I would consider defensive strategies, your NIST, CSF, you got your ISO, your CIS controls. You have all of these things that you could do. Mm-hmm. The question is, what are you going to do? And so as you now, the cybersecurity hygiene aspect of it, at this particular point, it's your defensive line, right? There are certain things that you just have to do. Mm-hmm. You have to defend your network, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem. You have to have a fundamental baseline way of how you're going to handle these things. Vulnerability management comes to mind. If you're on-prem, you have your firewall rules. You have all of these things that, your IDS, IPS, all of this technology, legacy stuff that you can't let up, right? Yeah. Your line has to be strong. And then, you literally have stuff coming out of the sky, and that's your deep threat. You have the cloud, right? And it's just, there are things that are falling out, but there's a distinction between the defensive strategy based on actuality or victimization, right? You can be like a state-sponsored attack. If you're in direct competition with China, the way you build your defense is completely different than if you are for lack of selling cars for lack of a better example, right? And the way you actually choose to build your defense is different based on what the offenses that you're facing, right? And so for me, the way I think about, defensive strategy and how we're going to protect is doing the basics first, right? And then, where are my weaknesses? And then we can spawn off into a conversation about talent development. But where are those weaknesses that they can poke to get in? If I'm going to tell, my boss, if they hit the line and they find a way based on the 0 day to get through my network defense and go score a touchdown, okay, all right, that's just, you know, based on something that I couldn't control. But if I have a vulnerability that's been out there for a year and I have done nothing about it, you know, we all know that that's a weakness in the line, that we're just, you know, we got to have our linebackers or somebody back there covering that weakness in that spot. So those, you know, and I'm using football as an analogy because I'm a huge football fan, but you know, like I said, the way you build that as the defensive coordinator, you have to understand where not only, you know, what you need to build, but where your weaknesses are. And then with the change in technologies, right? With the same type of visibility that you need on-prem, you need in the cloud. And if you're not worried about, if you're migrating data from, you know, on-premise to the cloud infrastructure, what about the security of that data as you're transmitting it? And the CISO itself has to have their eyes on a lot of different things.
Wow, so that's a lot of ground. So lots of thoughts that came to mind, right? The first off, you said we got to get the basics right. And you mentioned cloud towards the end. So I'm thinking to myself, right, as a CISO, your baseline is changing. Right. So if you started using Dropbox, if you started using Salesforce or whatever, right, your baseline with which you're looking at, let me get my basics right 6 months ago to now has changed. So whose responsibility is it to say, hey, by the way, our basics just went up, right? There are 3 more things that we have to add to a list of 10 that we have to make sure that we get covered all the time. And how does that then translate into the broader organization accepting the fact, for example, for lack of a better term, MFA is now going to be always on, regardless of whether you're in the home, in the coffee shop, or at home. So what have you seen success factors in terms of, number one, understanding the baseline is changing, and number two, making sure that the broader organization understands and adapts it?
You know what's funny? And I'm gonna side note there as far as making sure the organization understand. One thing that organizations historically have done bad is security awareness, right? That is one of the basics. And there is not an employee out there that is listening to this or extended, you know, out there in the world that doesn't know what multi-factor authentication is, that does not know that it's probably a good idea if my bank forces me to use multi-factor, that my company should probably force me to use multi-factor. And what we get involved in this space a lot of times are these philosophical discussions about whether the C-level executives should be required to do multi-factor, because God forbid we ask them to take another 30 seconds to make sure the network is secure. The education component of it, in order to be able to articulate to an organization that this is the best thing for us, resides with the CISO and the security awareness team. These are basics. The goalpost has changed, right? Before we can get away in Office 365, you know, doing whatever we're doing, until we start getting these hits, right? People start compromising Office 365, and it's like, okay, we'll turn on multi-factor. And for me, multi-factor, that's legacy. That's not even cutting edge, right? We're still doing stuff that's hygiene related, right? Multi-factor can get us out of a lot of trouble when we have to answer to regulators or states about data breach laws, right? It's just like encryption. I don't understand why things are still in the clear. I've been in this space for over 25 years, and 15 years ago, maybe encryption was a big to do, but not in 2021. This is basic types of things. So, you know, speed of business. I know security, and we talked about this, security and privacy we're not a revenue generator. So it's always something added on, and it's usually marketing and sales that have the biggest issues with some of the technology that is being asked to be used. But it's just, at the end of the day, those goalposts are moving, and you can anticipate goalposts moving, and you have to, as a defensive coordinator, say, not only gauge your environment, engage the company, gauge where they are from a maturity perspective and where you want to go, and then pick your battles, right?
Yeah, no, so one last question, and you touched on it briefly, which is talent, right? So again, sticking to the football analogy, right? You've picked your defense based on certain attributes, right? But now, as you're getting closer to the playoffs, you're seeing that the offense is changing. And you now have to go to the free market and actually get the right set of talent. So what have you seen in terms of success of people realizing that his or her organization now needs to evolve, and getting the existing employees to embrace the fact that, hey, you have to become product evangelists right now, because we do have an issue right now with third party. And therefore, understanding what third-party hardware and software is being integrated into our products is now the broader goal of the CISSP organization, versus sitting into a SOC or looking for instant response and pen testing. So have you seen success in evolution of an existing organization, or is it usually you have to bring in talent from outside?
And it all depends on the talent level of your defensive coordinator. There are positions that you play on the field that are basic, and then there are things that need expertise. Now, I'm one for talent development, because I know I can't go to market and buy everything I need. But I also know, having worked for large organizations, that you have legacy people that are just comfortable. Right? They're comfortable. They're not hungry. They're not looking to learn anything more. They just want to do the same thing they've been doing day to day. Those people have a place. And then, when we start talking about talent development, I find that a lot of the younger folks, I mean, I can never bury any young college person coming out of college I could never bury them, because they're so hungry for knowledge, right? So you keep trying to bury them, but you actually have a development plan for them, right? You can tell just, in hiring somebody, if you're hiring somebody right out of college, maybe they're second string defensive line, right? They're actually watching, but you're training them, you're giving them a curriculum that they're following so they can be good at their job. And then you find out, oh, they have the ability, for instance, to be a linebacker, to see more than just what's in front of them. Okay, well, they get more training and things like that. But then you have specialists, right? If you're looking around your talent pool and you're like, okay, I need a good corner. I need to be able to lock down this receiver all the time. Then that's a specialty set that you actually have to go out and try to go to market with. But you still need to feed that person too. I find that the easiest way for talent to leave your organization, if you're not investing in them, that's been bottom line, hands down, the quickest way to get somebody to leave your organization. If you don't provide them with training, ways to get certifications, any type of career plan for them. If you hire them for a certain role, the last thing they want to do is stay in that role for the next 15 years. They get in there and then they want to learn something new. And if you keep it challenging for them, you can create some loyalty built in just by investing in them. And what I see is organizations really just trying to go out and buy what they're looking for, as opposed to investing in, building that talent.
Very true. Again, great conversation. I know we covered a lot of ground over here. And I love the football analogy. That's the first for the TechCast. So looking forward to keeping in touch, Mary, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ashwin. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.